Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala Rasulih al-Kareem. Viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Moving on to the next ayat, next verse of the Quran, 259 of Surah al-Baqarah. The translation is, or take the similitude of one who passed by a hamlet, all in ruins to its roofs. He said, Oh, how shall Allah bring it ever to life after this its death? But Allah caused him to die for 100 years, then raised him up again. He said, How long didst thou tarry thus? He said, Perhaps a day, or perhaps a part of a day. He said, No, you have tarried for thus 100 years. But look at your food and your drink. They show no signs of age. And look at your donkey, and that we may make of you a sign unto the people. Look further at the bones, how we bring them together and clothe them with flesh. When this was shown clearly to him, he said, I know that Allah has power over all things. This verse does not mention the person by name, but is believed to be Prophet Uzair alayhi salam, according to the traditions. But the important message in this verse is the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He made him to die, and then He brought him back to life. And to show His power, the food and drink was still the same after 100 years. There was no sign of decay. But the donkey had died, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought the donkey back to life to show that Allah is able to do all things. The one who brought the human being into existence from nothing can also recreate him and bring him back to life. But sometimes people think that when a person dies, there's no way he's going to come back to life. So this verse of the Quran, this ayat of the Quran, makes it clear that a day is coming when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring all the dead people back to life, and they will be made to give an account of all that they did in this life. So that's the important message. The Quran gives little incidents sometimes, or makes references to people, and explains the moral, the central message, which is that people should not think that they will not be brought back to life and made to give an account. In the next verse, again, it shows the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this verse 260 relates to the conversation between Allah and Ibrahim alayhi salam. The translation, Behold, Ibrahim said, My Lord, show me how you give life to the dead. He said, Do you not then believe? He said, Yes, but to satisfy my understanding, He said, Take 4 birds, tame them to turn to you, put a portion of them on every hill, and call to them. They will come to you flying with speed. Then know that Allah is exalted in power and wise. This, of course, these verses can only be understood with the help of the hadith, with the help of the traditions. The Quran makes a reference, but to go into the details, one has to go beyond the words of the Quran to see what actually happened. It is said that Ibrahim al-Islam asked Allah to show him, not because he disbelieved or he had doubts, but just because he wanted to see the power of Allah. So this is very important to understand, that it was not a question of doubt, it was a question of how Allah brings things back to life. And this verse is very, very important to show how Allah's power is demonstrated. So according to the traditions, it is said that Ibrahim al-Islam took 4 birds and he made minced meat out of all of them, mixed the meat, and put the meat on different parts of the hill, different hills. And then he had the head of the birds in his hands. And then he wanted to see how the flesh of the different birds will come and get connected with the head. So he kept the head in his hand, and then he called. And the flesh from the different hills started coming because he had mixed it up and put portions in different hills. So he saw that coming, flying in the air, and then when it came close to the head, Ibrahim al-Islam removed the head and then put another head of another bird. And then the meat stopped. It didn't get connected. But when he put the right head of the bird, that whose flesh it was, it got connected. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought it back to life. So this is a demonstration of the power of Allah to show people that Allah is able to do all things. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given examples in the Quran about His power. The Quran is about the greatness of Allah, the power of Allah. Most times most people do not believe in Allah because they do not understand the power of Allah. They think that powers other than Allah are the real ones. In fact, the Quran's central message is that the real power belongs to Allah. He gives it to people just for test purposes. He gives it to people just to see whether they understand that the power comes from Allah or it comes from their own selves. This verse again is a very important lesson for mankind, that the real power belongs to Allah. The next verse, 261, goes on to say, the parable of those who spend their substance in the way of Allah is that of a grain of corn. It grows 7 ears, and each ear has 100 grains. Allah gives manifold increase to whom He pleases, and Allah cares for all, and He knows all things. This verse shows the importance of giving charity, the importance of spending their wealth in the way of Allah to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next verse, 262, those who spend their substance in the cause of Allah and follow not up their gifts with reminders of their generosity or injury, for whom the reward, or with injury, or for them the reward is with their Lord. On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. Kind words, 263, kind words and covering of faults are better than charity, followed by injury. Allah is free of all wants, and He is most forbearing. These verses show the importance of good manners, the importance of generosity, the importance of spending in the way of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes generous people. Allah likes people who are willing to do things for others. This is a very important reminder that even kind words, covering of faults, these are good deeds. And if they are done for the sake of Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward that person according to His greatness. And His greatness, we cannot even imagine how many times the reward will be for the good deeds that are done in this life. Verse 264, O you who believe, cancel not your charity by reminders of your generosity or by injury, like those who spend their substance to be seen of men, but believe neither in Allah nor in the last day. They are in a parable like a hard, barren rock on which is little soil. On it falls heavy rain. When it leaves it, just a bare stone. They will be able to do nothing with anything they have earned. And Allah guides not those who reject faith. This verse, of course, is a reminder to people who may be doing a lot of good deeds, but they're not doing it for the sake of Allah. And on the Day of Judgment, Allah will reward only those deeds which were done purely for the sake of Allah. There is a hadith something to the effect that there will be people who did a lot of good deeds, but because they were not done for the sake of Allah, they will not be rewarded for that. It is said something to the effect that a person who died fighting, which people thought was for the sake of Allah, and he will be questioned by Allah on the Day of Judgment. Tell me what you did for my deen, for my religion. And he will say, Oh Allah, I died for your deen. I gave my life. I sacrificed my life for your deen. And Allah will say, you are lying. You did this to be called a brave person. You did it not for my sake. You did it for the sake of, of your own reputation, for your own self. So that person would be rejected. Then a person will be called who gave a lot of wealth, a rich person, and he will be asked the same question. Tell me what you did for my deen. And he will say, Allah, I spent a lot of my wealth for your deen. And Allah will tell him, you are lying. It was not done for my sake. It was done so that people would call you generous, and that has been done. People have called you generous. Your reward has already been given, in other words. And then a person will be called who was considered to be a great scholar of Islam. He taught people Islam. And he will be asked the same question, and he will say, oh Allah, I did this for your deen. And Allah will say, you are lying. You did it for show, that it was done not to please me, but to be considered a great scholar, and that has been done. So he would also be rejected. So this verse is very important reminder to people that whatever good deed they do, it should be done purely for the sake of Allah. Because the Quran says in another place that on that day their good deeds will be of no avail to them. They may have done mountains of good deeds, but the good deeds will have no value in the sight of Allah because it was not done for the sake of Allah. Allah will separate those good deeds which were done for Allah and those good deeds which were done for other than Allah. This one has to keep in mind all the time that one should be doing good deeds for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are people who do a lot of good deeds, but they are doing these deeds for reasons other than that. And this is why the scholars say that one should check one's intention before doing the deed. If the intention is not right, one should correct the intention. And if the intention changes while the deed is being done, then he should do istighfar. He should seek forgiveness of Allah and change the intention. And he should ask for forgiveness. If the intention is corrupted by shaitan, then he should seek forgiveness from Allah. And when a person seeks forgiveness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives him. So the ulama say the last attack of the shaitan, first, he does not allow people to do good deeds. And when they do it, then he tries to spoil the intention that you will be considered a great man, you'll be considered very generous, you'll be considered a great scholar, people will look up to you, you will have a high position, you'll make a lot of money, something other than the pleasure of Allah. This is very difficult to avoid. And this is where one has to look into one's heart as to what is the real intention. People may be doing a lot of good deeds. And this is, Shaitan does not worry about people doing good deeds, but he's worried about what the intention is. A lot of people may have done mountains of good deeds, but the shaitan comes and spoils the intention. So we have to ask Allah to forgive us for any mistakes we make. Intention, of course, is in the heart, and only Allah knows about it. People are not supposed to make judgment on others. Allah knows what's in the heart, and every person has to look into his heart and see why I'm doing this. So may Allah protect us from the attacks of the shaitan, because he is always with a person making his attacks, and those attacks, of course, are not very easy to defend against. Verse 265, and the likeness of those who spend their substance seeking to please Allah and to strengthen their souls is as a garden. A high, fertile, heavy rain falls on it, but makes it yield a double increase of harvest. And it receives not heavy rain, and if it receives not heavy rain, light moisture sufficeth it. And Allah sees well whatever you do. This is a reference to those people who are good people, who are seeking to please Allah. So they are good deeds will have great rewards. So it's like sowing the crop in this life and getting double harvest, so many times the harvest. So even if the deeds are not very big in number, in quantity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them great reward. So according to the hadith of Rasulullah, if a person does something, even if it's small, but with the right intention and continuously, with sincerity and continuously, then the reward is great. So something done, even if it's small, continuously and regularly with sincerity, earns great rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah tabaraka ta'ala gives us opportunities in this life. This life has been given to us to increase the number of good deeds, as many good deeds as we can, because there are different levels of paradise. In paradise, people can get any level. This is a field which is open to everybody. They can get any level which they strive for. In verse 266, the translation, does any of you wish that he should have a garden with date palms and vines and streams flowing underneath and all kinds of fruit, while he is stricken with old age and his children are not strong enough to look after themselves, that it should be caught in a whirlwind with fire therein and be burnt up? Thus doth Allah make clear to you his signs that ye may consider. This is a very important reminder that human beings, no matter how rich, how powerful they may be, they are still within the grasp of Allah. Anything can happen, any disaster can happen. So we should not think of ourselves as being self-sufficient. We hear the term that so-and-so is a self-made person, he has done this, he's done that, he's done great things. But all those things that were done were with the will. Allah allowed that to happen. So a person may make a lot of investments and make a lot of wealth, but it doesn't mean that he is outside the reach of Allah. Like Qarun was a very rich man. But when the disaster came, the disaster destroyed his wealth. He destroyed Qarun and all his wealth. So one should have the humility. If Allah has given person wealth, power, things of this world, position, they can be taken away anytime. Nothing can stop. When Allah makes a decision, then everything, that decision is carried out. Conditions are formed. Conditions come into existence. We have seen from experience how many great people, how many strong people, powerful people, governments, countries, how they fell. The conditions came about and the destruction came. So this is not something that happened in the past. These kind of things keep repeating. And one should have the ability, the humility to understand that no matter what we have, we are still within the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His power is so great that nothing can happen in this world without His will. So this verse reminds people that no matter what the blessings are, Allah has given blessings to people in this life. The wealth, the children, the power, all these are blessings if they're used in the right way. And if they're not used in the right way, they will be a cause of regret, remorse on the day of judgment. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the proper understanding of the Quran, and also to follow in the footsteps of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa akhirat dawana in alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.